Hey, welcome everybody to the second Rockin the Code World with dotNetDave. I'm David McCarter. I'm glad you're back. And we have a really awesome show lined up for today. And we have awesome shows lined up for the rest of this month and into November. So I hope you come back every Saturday. And if you're not here live, then please catch it recorded. And but if you watch live, you'll win more prizes. So we'll talk about that in a second. So I'm really happy that my second guest for my show is Woody Zuill. Woody's a friend of mine for a long time. He lives in the same area that I do. And I actually haven't seen or talked to him in a while. So I'm really excited about talking to him and catching up with all that he's doing and all he's doing with Agile and coaching and things like that. So let's get started. Can you put up my slide deck?
David, you forgot to share your screen.
I didn't share it. Oh, I have to share my screen. It lost my screen? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Perfect. There we go. Yep.
It's working out the kinks. All right, so show number 2, October 3rd. If I can get PowerPoint to work. There we go. So those of you who maybe have not don't know me by now, I'm a Microsoft MVP and CSharpCorner MVP, award-winning developer, architect, all that kind of stuff. There's my email address. Please email me with your questions and comments. There's my Twitter handle. Please follow me at Twitter, not Facebook. I don't really use Facebook anymore. And there's my LinkedIn handle. So that's all about me. That's enough. All right, so welcome to the second show. Like I said, I'm really glad you're here. I've been really excited about doing this show and bringing this show to all of you worldwide since this idea was presented to me. So I'm really happy. I think about it all week. And like I said last week, you know, this show is for you. It's not for me. I do enough. I'm just doing this for you guys to help you not only in your coding, but also in your career too. So this is for you. This is your show. So, but I can only make it your show if you let me know what you want to see or hear or do or anything like that. So please reach out and email me. There are no stupid questions at all. I will read every single comment and incorporate them into the show if I think it'll work out good for everybody. As you know, if you're watching live, it's every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. That's where I live. And this is what I'm going to do in most of the shows. We're going to interview a top expert in this industry. We'll do some tech news, maybe. I'm not doing that today just because I've been behind on looking that stuff up. And also, I have this dog fooding segment that I did last week that I really like the dog fooding segments. But I don't have that this week either because I've been flooded with other stuff to do. But we'll do something a little bit different today that will be easier than recording my Amazon Fire TV. So, and more to come. And again, this is your show, so let me know what you want me to do, and I'll do it. So, to entice you guys to not only watch the show, but watch the show live, every show I'm going to be giving away these sets of gifts. They will change maybe on every show. So one of the big things we're going to give away is a $50 Amazon gift card to anybody in the world. I save that to the end, so you watch. The first thing we'll give away is a CSharpCorner swag bag full of t-shirts, backpack, and whatever else they have at the CSharpCorner offices. And then I'll also give away, unfortunately, to U.S. residents only, a dotNetDave swag pack, and which will include lapel pins, stickers, and all kinds of things I have piled up here because I couldn't travel this year. So I think you'll like it. And I'll throw in at least one of my custom dotNetDave guitar picks. So, and at the end, everybody will win a free copy of CodeRush from DevExpress. CodeRush is the only refactoring tool I've ever used. I swear by it. And if you watch to the end, you'll be able to get your copy of it too for free. So how do you win? Well, pay attention and have fast fingers. All these giveaways today have a question behind it. So listen, Google fast if you don't know the answer, and put it in the chat, and Simon will pick the answer. Okay, I mean pick the winner, and we'll announce the winner live on the show. So before we get into the first gift, the last show of this month is actually on Halloween. And, Halloween, at least in America, is where everybody gets dressed up and goes trick-or-treating, and adults have Halloween parties and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of wanted to make my show on Halloween fun. And so I will promise you, I will wear full-blown Kiss-like makeup if you come up with the design for my face on the left-hand side there. So on the right-hand side is one of my very first favorite groups when I was a teenager, Kiss. I've been to many of their shows. I used to dress up like Kiss during Halloween. I think the last character I dressed up as was Paul Stanley right here. And but I've tweeted this image. And if you go get that image, I want you to design Kiss-like makeup, but in a geek kind of theme, right? So maybe like an evil 0 and 1, or I don't know, you guys come up with it. So if you're creative out there and you want to win a CSharpCorner gift bag shipped anywhere in the world, please draw my makeup and retweet it with those things there, my handle, and also Rockin Code World. And the winner will get that prize pack. So I hope you'll do that. And if I don't get any entries, I'm not dressing up. So it's all on you guys. So here's the first giveaway. And this is the CSharpCorner gift swag bag, including a backpack. So I'm going to only leave the question up for a little bit. And whoever gets the answer first will be picked by Simon, and he'll flash the winner up on the screen. So ready? Here we go. The CSharpCorner website started in what year? Dun, 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 dun. I'm trying to do the game show song. Okay, so that's the first question for the CSharpCorner gifts. What year did the CSharpCorner website start? Okay. So instead of dog fooding this week, because I was super busy with doing other things like work and taking care of health-related things, I decided instead of doing dog fooding, to just show one of my Twitter polls. If you follow me at Twitter, I'm always doing Twitter polls because mainly just to kind of fish for ideas on what you guys are interested in for maybe an article for CSharpCorner or something like that. And but anyway, I did this poll back in March, I think probably towards the end of March, and it was about remote working. And because I love remote working, and I've been doing it full time for about 8 years now, and so I did a poll and just what do developers think about remote working, and since we're all forced to remote work right now, I kind of want to see what everybody thinks. So at least at March 27th, when this poll ended, 51% say they're more productive of remote working, 41% say less, and unfortunately 8% were laid off. So I hope the more productive percent changes. Maybe I'll do one towards the end of the year, now that everybody's been working remote for so long. But me personally, I get so much more work done at home, and because I don't have so many distractions, my work environment is so much more comfortable because my kitchen is right there, the beach is about 1 kilometer away, I have nice lighting in here. I just feel so much better working at home, and I get more work done. Back when I started this, I guess back when I started working remote in the early 2000s, I figured I got as much work done remote in 2 days as I did 5 days in the office. And that's a little bit changed now, but I still get more work done working remote. And I know everybody's different. I know everybody, has different needs and requirements. And some people don't like being at home. Some people like being home like me. But, the only thing I hope that good comes from this horrible pandemic we're all dealing with right now is that it's going to teach companies, not only software companies, but other companies that, remote working works. And I've already written a couple articles about that on CSharpCorner. I hope you'll check it out, and where I explain this in much more detail. But, I'm more healthier being working remote. I have less expenses. I impact the environment less. To me, there's just so many positive things with remote working that I really like it. Now, there's some negative things, I wouldn't call them negatives, but maybe challenges. Managing people remotely is different than managing people in an office. You just can't corral them and talk to them. And, you have to set up a meeting on Teams or something like that. So management is a challenge with remote work, but at least with all the tools we have available to us, in 2020, what we do can be easily tracked and then looked by the company. I mean, where I currently contract, I have to fill out 3 different time cards every week because of it. Which is kind of a pain. But anyway, so let me know what you think about remote working. I don't see any comments, but I really love to hear your comments if you're liking remote working or not, and how's it doing with you guys during this pandemic. So I'm not even sure. I don't think where I work currently, they even announced when we're going to go back in the office. I haven't been back in the office since the middle of March. And I'm okay with that. I do miss my team members. I do, that's for sure. But I like being at home. Okay, so second giveaway for today. This will be the dotNetDave gift pack. Unfortunately, only U.S. residents. Because it just costs too freaking much to ship anything outside of the country. And it might take months to get there with our postal system. But anyway, so answer this question and you'll get a dotNetDave gift pack, including a dotNetDave custom guitar pick. What year did I start as a Microsoft MVP? I say this all the time. You can Google it. It's not that hard to find out. And if no one gets it live, then if you're watching the recording, tweet your answer to Rockin The Code World at real.netdave, and whoever tweets first, I'll give them the prize pack after the show if it's not picked up during the show. So there you go. In what year did I start as a Microsoft MVP? Not CSharpCorner MVP, Microsoft MVP. Okay? All right. Wait, we're giving away the gift card now? Huh. Oh, wait, I have to put in the answer to Simon. All right. So I thought I was doing this at the end. I guess I messed up my slide decks. Okay. So anyway, so here's the giveaway for the $50 Amazon gift card. And of course, this will be shipped anywhere in the world. Oh, CSharpCorner people cannot participate in this. All right. What does the acronym SMTP stand for? First one comments gets $50. I need $50 from Amazon. Okay, so what does SMTP stand for? The full name. Okay, and whoever puts that in chat first wins. All right. So I think it's guess time. Where is... Okay, hold on. Something's wrong with my slide deck. Oh, I hid Woody's slide. That's the problem. Huh. Sorry about that, everybody. Technical difficulties. So today, I'm really happy to have my very good friend Woody Zuill come on the show. I've known Woody before I say his bio. I've known Woody for a long time. We met a long time ago. He helped me with my user group for part of the 20 years of its existence. He was nice enough to come, not only come to my retirement party from the user group, but he also spoke at the retirement party. So I'm very appreciative of that. And because we are good friends, Woody's even babysat me in the hospital. So I won't go into that story, but he's helped me in the hospital too when I really, really needed it and was scared out of my mind. So before Woody starts talking, Woody, I will always be internally grateful for you and the other guys doing that for me when I needed it. So with that said, Woody Zuill is an Agile and learn software development guy and has been programming computers for almost 40 years. He's the originator and pioneer of the mob programming approach to teamwork and software development and provides workshops, training on team software development. He's also the founder of the No Estimates discussion, which I hope to talk to him about later in the show, and frequent speaker at conferences, user groups, and all that kind of good stuff. So welcome, Woody.
Hey there. Thank you,
Hey,
Dave.
there you go. How's it going, man?
All right. Doing great. And I really appreciate you as well. I've been, last night I went into my emails to see if I could find my first involvement in the old VB users group, but it only went back to 2002. And I know, I'm certain it goes back to 1996 or 7. And I know I gave my first talk at a user group there in 1999.
1999, yeah.
So this was, I got to make this really clear. You are kind of like a vortex. You draw people in, and I can draft behind you. I learned a lot from you, and but at the same time, I got a lot of experiences, like the encouragement to speak, and now that's pretty much what I'm doing for a living. Back in those days, I couldn't hardly even talk in front of a group of 10 people. And now I've been to, so many conferences, and it's not still completely comfortable, but, that's where I started. So thank you.
Well, I think I'm more, instead of a vortex, maybe I'm a black hole. I just suck everything, No, but
Well,
no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's like, if you're when I was in high school running track, you kind of learn to get behind someone else when you're going against the headwind or whatever, so that you're drafting behind them, so to speak.
Oh, that's me.
So on.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of the person who was out in front and made it easy for guys like me to get involved and, get drawn into the user group, get drawn into the management of the user group and, encouraging us to speak and come up with topics. That was powerful stuff for my career.
Yeah. So do you remember how you found the user group originally? I was trying to think about that and I couldn't remember that far back.
Well, so first of all, when I first started learning to program in 82 or so, I got my hands on a computer that had a built-in BASIC. They all came with BASIC in those days. So I started learning to program just in BASIC. And about 93, my little brother, who's also a programmer, I was visiting one day, and he had a shrink wrap Visual Basic. It must have been Visual Basic 3. And he said, you ought to try this and see what you think of it. So I got my hands on that. I was trying to program Windows using C++. That was a monster difficult thing to do back in those days.
I know.
That was not Visual C, of course, or anything like that. And so, there I was with VB3. And I was really in the midst of a learning phase because I was thinking of changing my career from what I had been doing with a little shop, graphics and signage and so on, and move into programming for a living. And the VB3 was a really quick avenue into becoming productive.
Yeah.
And somewhere around there, I know I started. It was probably, what was that magazine? Computer Edge.
Computer Edge.
Back
Computer
in those
Edge.
days, I must have seen a listing in there.
Yeah,
and so
that's where I found it. That's where I found Richard, is through Computer Edge. Yeah.
So you folks were meeting down in about 20 miles from where I live.
Yeah.
Easy to get down there, direct shot from the freeway. And even the very first meeting, I learned so much stuff. I would tell this to everybody, 2 things to help move your career along: get involved in a user group, go to the user groups, and try to get involved in as a volunteer in helping out. It's a great way to make connections, learn things, and boost your, forward motion in your career.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I don't know how many millions of times I've probably said that in front of people, but the people that are struggling to learn or want to learn more, the first thing out of my mouth is a user group. Or in CSharpCorner, they have chapters in India, same thing. CSharpCorner
Yeah, yeah.
chapters are like user groups, and quite frankly, running that user group for 20 years is the reason I know a lot of what I know, because I went to almost every single meeting, and
Yeah.
when you sit there and listen, it kind of seeps into, after a while, right?
Well, there's an interesting part of my career. My first contract, when I started working for other people, my first contract I got differently. But after that, for about 2 or 3 years, all of the work that I did originated somehow in the user group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People like Woody Pewitt, who knew everybody in town.
Yeah.
All you had to do is ask him, hey, you know of anything coming up? And in the
Mhm.
group meetings, they would always have people come up and announce, jobs that were available.
Yeah.
So this was a powerful thing. And really, I would say for 3 or 4 years, all the contracts that I got, and then when I started working permanent full time, a lot of the references I would get came from those experiences, all directed back to the user group.
Yep.
It's a powerful way to build a network quickly.
Yeah.
If your career is just getting started out, or if you've been in it for years,
Yeah.
either way.
Yeah, yeah, you're totally right. And the one thing I want to say before I forgot is I believe that our user group had the best logo of any user group in the world because of your wife did it.
Yeah, she's a great artist,
I
and I
still
love that
love
little
that.
iconic kind of computer nerd with a propeller hat.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it was kind of cute, but very simple.
yeah.
Reproduced nicely on any printed material or on the website. Thank you. I'll tell her. I'll tell her that.
Yeah, I've said that many times, but I look at user groups logos now and I go, no good, no good, no good. So anyway,
Well,
yeah,
let's go ahead. Let's go ahead.
So, so I don't know why my OneNote's not working correctly. Oh, there we go. Oh, so I've asked you when we first got together. So since I've known you for a long time, and since I've known your progress in this world since for over 20 years, I guess now. So you're the creator of mob programming, and so first, kind of quickly explain what mob programming is to everybody who doesn't know what it is, and then what led you to come up with mob programming?
So first of all, I think it was a team effort. So what is mob programming? I put it in this one sentence. It's all the brilliant minds working together on the same thing at the same time in the same space and at the same computer. So when we originated this idea, we didn't set out to do that. I had already been pair programming for over 20 years, and I knew the advantages of working with someone else closely. There was actually a little period of time we both worked at a place together where we got to kind of collaborate on things, but I really was experimenting with pair programming at that time and learned the real value of it. And it was much bigger than just, that it helps you do better work.
Yeah.
It has all these advantages to it. It's a highly amplified learning environment. You're sharing the ideas from 2 different people, so you're integrating your ideas in real time, so to speak, and so on. When I had the chance to work with more than 2 people at a single computer, I would take that, and it happened a few times. In 2005 or 6, we would do a daily lunch and learn, so to speak, where I talked my boss into providing lunches for the team, and we would just get together in a room and look at some problem of code that was hard to work on, and we would refactor it together. And we were all learning together as a group with one person at the computer, but everybody else interjecting ideas to try. Well, that wasn't mob programming, but it was on the path to it. In 2011, I was working in a company where we were focusing on learning to collaborate well. We were focusing on building our skills. We were focusing on learning to identify what bad code looked like so that we could, change it, and learning what to change it to.
Mhm.
So in doing that, we had set aside 3 hours a week, 3 to 4 hours a week to sit together as a team on the company time and practice and study ways to improve our coding.
Mhm.
During that time, we were actually learning how to communicate with each other. Whereas before, I'd been programming almost 15 years before, probably 15 years before I even heard about pair programming. It
Mhm.
didn't really exist back in those days. I was a solo programmer.
Yeah.
So this is sort of the thing. We were learning to interact with each other because we normally don't get any practice at it. As developers, we're working alone all the time.
Mhm.
There's no one to talk to except ourselves. And, we can still argue with ourselves. That happens sometimes. But, it's really more about let's learn how to communicate. And there's three things that we were learning. One was we're learning to go ahead and try someone else's idea and not argue back why we think our idea is better. The next one was we were learning how to explain ourselves better and use the whiteboard to make that communication. And the last one was learning to just be quiet. Let's
Mhm.
just not say anything unless it's meaningful to say it. Because I've noticed with teams, especially when they first start out, everybody wants to share every idea they have. There's no big value in that.
Mhm.
It's like it's just noise in the system.
Yeah.
If a good idea comes forward, all the ideas can stop for a moment while we try that idea. So,
Mhm.
anyways, we were attempting to study together and to learn how to interact well. And then one day, somebody came to me. I was the manager of this group, but I was also working as a programmer full time with them. One of the team members came to me and said they've got this project that we need to restart. It was already a year late when I got there. I kind of put it on the back burner. They were getting anxious about working on it again because our time frame was shrinking. And so I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And she said, "Well, I'm going to go look at it with another programmer, and then we'll let you know what we think." Well, she came back, and in about an hour, she said, "Boy, this code is terrible." And the way she said it was, "There's a lot of badness lurking underneath the surface." From the surface, it looked like it worked. You could turn it on, you could click on things, and so on, but it wasn't working very well. And I said, "What do you want to do about that?" And she said, "Let's get everybody together into a meeting where we can decide we'll look at the code, talk about the problems, and we'll decide who should be working on this. And we'll put a little team together to work on it." But instead of doing that, when we got together in this meeting, we almost instantly started working on it together using this concept. It's now called read by refactoring. With read by refactoring, you, instead of trying to read and understand difficult to understand code, you just start refactoring it. And pretty soon you have this clear understanding of what's going on,
Mhm.
and the code is much better. And you never need to read it in the future to or to try and understand it. You can just see the names of the code is good. They're all the functions are all small. Everything makes it easier to read. So, anyways, we started doing that in this meeting, and it changed from being a meeting into being a working session. And within about an hour and a half or so, we were making good progress. Someone came into the room and they said, "Hey, we've got this room scheduled for a meeting. You have to leave." And somebody on the team said, let's find another room right away." And so we just moved. I found one in our schedule over at the place I was at. We had about 40 meeting rooms. We could find one, and we found one and got to it. And before the end of that second session, somebody said, "Let's just book rooms for the rest of the day. So when lunch is over, we just know where to go."
Mhm.
That's how, so we didn't invent anything. We just noticed something good happening, and we didn't let it stop. And to put the cap on it at the end of that day, I asked them, "Well, what do you want to do about this?" We were doing a daily retrospective. At the end of each day, we'd ask ourselves what went good and how do we get more of that tomorrow. And everybody said, just go book some rooms for tomorrow, and we'll work again this way tomorrow. I
Mhm.
looked this all up just a week ago. I had taken screenshots of my Outlook calendar, and I could see that we started on a Thursday. By the Friday, we decided we're going to do this a lot more. So I booked rooms for the whole next week, and we didn't stop. Since
Yeah.
then, we've been working that way. Now, I left the company in 2015. We started this in 2011, but I was getting so many requests to go speak at conferences. I've now been essentially to every continent except Antarctica, which I'd love to go there sometime, but I don't think they do conferences there. And I've shared this all over the place. That pressure from the industry to know more about it was a challenge to me. I thought I need to learn how to explain this and share it with people. And it's been a wonderful thing just to have that feeling that maybe I'm helping some other people. I
Yeah.
hope I didn't answer too much there, but that's the
No,
whole story.
no, that's great. I was just thinking while you're talking and about, I think you're a lot like me where, I do things to help other people, and you've been lucky enough that, or you've been smart enough or blessed enough, however you want to look at it, that this is what you do full time now. It's just helping people, right? Yeah. I would love to do that.
So here's the thing for me is that the first invitation I got to speak at an international conference outside of the U.S. was going to be the first time I was going to leave North America. I'd been to Canada, I'd been to Mexico, but I'd never been off this continent. But at that point in my career, whenever I wanted to speak at a conference, I would usually submit a request, like a proposal, and then maybe it would get accepted, maybe it wouldn't. They called me. They said, "Hey, we'd like you to come speak at our conference on both mob programming and no estimates." This was in 2013, and there was a lot of Twitter action about both those topics. And I kind of told them I can't afford to do this. It's I can't take the time off, pay to fly me there, put me up in a hotel. Said no. We'll pay to fly you here.
Yeah,
We'll give you a place to stay, and so on. And so that opened up my mind. Really, it's like, oh, I never thought that could be a career for me. That seemed like that was for the really smart people that were doing really amazing things. And hey, I've really, but it gave me an opportunity to share some ideas that were working for us, and now I've seen them working all over the world. I don't think we invented this as much as we stumbled upon a part of human nature, and that is people do want to communicate and collaborate with others. It's just so dang difficult all the time.
It is.
We got to make it easy for that to happen. And I hope I've had some influence on the industry. That little bit of time we worked together a few years back. I guess we've worked together a couple times, but boy, it was so hard to get anything done. It was so difficult to be effective in our work. At the end of the day, you felt frustrated and tired and worn out. And my wife used to tell me after we started mob program, she noticed this one day. She said, it used to be you'd come home and you were all grumpy and mad at stuff. She said, when you come home now, you're happy. You're enjoying your life. And I thought, boy, I wish everybody could have that.
Yeah. That's always a hard thing to, find, at least in your career and everything. But getting back to mob pro. So who came up with the name mob programming? Is that you?
Well, kind of, not really. I had read a paper from the Extreme Programming Conference from 2002 or so, and it had the word mob programming in the title of it. So I read that article long before we ever did this mob programming, and I adopted that phrase when I would go to user groups and do a coding dojo. So there's many ways to do coding dojos, but the basic idea of a coding dojo is it's going to be a social activity with whatever number of people you've got there. Well, when you have a user group, let's just say with 20 people, it can be really chaotic. So I would make this little joke. I would say, well, we're going to do this thing where everybody's going to program. We're all going to work on the same thing with just this one screen we're projecting up. It's not like a pair. It's more like a mob.
Right.
And then I would say, but we don't want to be chaotic. We don't want to be an unruly mob. We want to be a ruly mob, And so that name that was meant to be a joke. And then once we started working this way, the team at our original place, the team kind of took that name. Just like anywhere you go, you'll see these scrum teams and stuff, and they give themselves names. And they wanted that name. I was calling it a whole team approach. Or whole team programming, because I want to have all the skills and knowledge to do this work sitting together, not just the front end people or the back end people, but add into this mix a database expert, a tester, a product owner. All the knowledge is sitting there with the team so we can work directly from start to finish on anything we're going to do without having to go off the team. It gets
Wouldn't
rid
that
of
be nice?
distraction. Well, it's how we are when we're writing some code for ourselves. If we're writing
Right.
code for ourselves, we don't have to go ask somebody else anything. We just have it all there. We might need to look stuff up, in a search engine. But the basic concept is this is about working with the knowledge that's about the product we're writing right here and now.
Yeah.
And so anyways, that's where the word originally came from. The team kind of accepted it. I found my slides from my very first talk in 2012, less than a year after we started working this way. People started hearing about it
Mhm.
purely through word of mouth. And in my first talk, I titled it Whole Team Programming. And by the end of that first talk, because there was a slide showing the mob programming team, the people that were actually on our team, they call themselves mob programming. They said, people were calling it mob programming. If the team had been called, the Hello Kitty team, maybe we'd all be doing, Hello Kitty programming. It was just by chance. I'm not very good at inventing names,
Mhm.
but once one sticks,
Yeah, keep it.
keep it. But I do
Yeah.
encourage people, if mob programming it just doesn't make sense for you, the name, use whatever name you want.
Yeah.
Some people are calling it ensemble programming, others call it team programming. I like whatever works for you. That's what you should do. Don't stick with what I called it or what we called it. Use whatever works.
Yeah. That's, I've never used mob programming. I've seen you explain it a bunch of times, but I've not been on a team that used it. So unfortunately, I don't have any firsthand knowledge on it. But I was thinking the last couple of days about this interview, and I was thinking about back to my beginner days where when I started learning programming back in the early 90s, and up until into the 2000s, the main methodology for doing software engineering was waterfall, right?
Yes.
And then even when I was working up the street here, I started to learn and then teach at other companies the Microsoft software development lifecycle, right? Which is better than waterfall, but closely resembled it, right? And then all these other techniques came out like Agile and all these, and now mob programming. So there's lots of different styles these days, some better than others. And some people still use, I forgot what the guy at Microsoft told me once. They used like a combination of Agile and waterfall. I forgot what he termed it, but so they kind of do both, at least back then when I talked to this guy who used to run the Visual Studio team. And so there's all kinds of different methods, Unfortunately, the method I see in most of the teams that I work in now, because I just do consulting now, so I don't work full-time, for a long period of time at any company now. So I'm always going to different teams and different projects. And I came up with a name for that, what I'm seeing at least on these teams. And I termed it yesterday, pants on fire methodology, right? So you've heard it here first, pants on fire programming. That's my term. But it seems to be that too many teams, that's the way they work, right?
Yeah.
Either they are just in crisis mode all the time, and there's lots of reasons for that, which is mostly horrible architecture of the system, right? Or no architecture of the system, right? And now they get themselves into a mess where that's all that happens. Whoever's screaming the loudest, that's what gets worked on. And that's not, to me, that's not the right way to approach it. And just because somebody's screaming doesn't mean you throw out, the FDA, for example, and not test anything, right? And so that's the way that kind of seems to me, is like no
Yes.
architecture, no documentation, no thought process, just do it kind of thing,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
So
and
there are many good ways to approach designing and accomplishing this work that we need to do. But what I noticed over the years is that once you start writing code, you're going to learn the reality.
Mhm.
Until that starts, all bets are off. So usually we try to figure everything out in an old-fashioned waterfall approach, which I don't know if anybody's really fully doing that anymore. You try to figure out everything so you understand what you're up against, what it'll take, who you're going to have to hire, and then you run off to do the work, and then you start realizing we were wrong.
Yep.
So we made a lot of important decisions before we had enough information to make those decisions.
Right.
I used to joke about software architects that, if you're going to be, if you're going to call yourself a software architect, I would first want you to design a complex system, create it, and maintain it for 5 years personally. At the end of that 5 years, if you're still sane, you probably have what it takes to be an architect. But it's going to drive you crazy because usually the architect's there at first, but then they sort of disappear. By the time the maintenance comes around, they're not around anymore in the waterfall. And so here's a bunch of developers mostly spending their day hacking around an architecture that really wasn't sufficient.
Right.
If we can refactor that architecture and move it to something better over time, fantastic. We're usually not allowed to do that. Matter of fact, at most organizations, whoever wrote the original code to implement the original design, they've retired or moved on, or
they're long
no longer
gone.
here.
Yeah.
And so everybody there is scared to death to touch that original code. I worked at one place for about 6 or 7 years where there was one chunk of code that was written before anybody that was still there showed up. And every time someone had to work on it, the rest of us would commiserate with them and wish them the best of luck and hope they come back alive, And we used to joke about we'd tie a rope around their waist and let them down into the code. And if any time they didn't signal back to us that they were still alive and breathing, we'd pull them out and resuscitate them. So it's like a ridiculous situation, but that's what we often have happen. So I really I don't think the waterfall, of course, was the solution, but it was a way a lot of people worked. The original documents on the idea and where a lot of people turned back to, they were really suggesting a little bit, at least a little bit more of an iterative process.
Yeah.
Eventually, they came up with this thing they call IID, which was an iterative incremental development. And we would see the spiral model and these other things, which tried to be somewhat, but when Agile came along, I really recognized this, and this really ties into mob programming closely. I think they recognized that if we can't work on the same thing, we can't collaborate if we're broken into different phases. If the people designing the application are not there when the people are writing the application, they can never really communicate or collaborate.
Right.
So they realized we got to work on this at the same time, but we're also going to work on it in the same space. That makes it easy for us to communicate. Well, nowadays, we're doing it remotely, which turns out to be pretty much just as easy. But in those days, if you need to communicate with someone who wasn't, in your room or on your floor, you had to make a meeting, or you needed to, you'd communicate through emails, which are terrible for communicating this stuff. You spend hours trying to explain yourself. I really believe what the advantage to Agile and now the advantage to mob programming is we get this extremely rapid feedback loop. So the people are going to ask us that we would ask questions of, they're going to be sitting there with us. If you and I were working on a job together, and we were working separately on this code that we're trying to deliver this week, and I came over to you to ask you a question, that means I have to interrupt you, take you out of the context of what you're thinking about, which isn't good for a developer usually, and then try to get you into my context, which I'm never going to explain things really well.
Right.
And in your brain, you're going, okay, I think I know what the problem is. But you think you know what the problem is because I'm not explaining it. You give me your idea, and I go, oh, yeah, that's going to work. I get back to my desk and start doing it and go, oh, I forgot to mention this other thing. So I have to go interrupt you again. So all of this is waste. These interruptions are waste. And then eventually, Dave, I'm pretty sure you would say, look, I got to get my work done today. Can we talk about this in the morning?
Right.
So now I'm in a queue.
Then you're stuck. Right.
I'm stuck. But at least you're not getting interrupted. So somebody's productive. We get rid of these things when we're mob programming, or at least when we're sitting in the same room and can easily turn to each other, hopefully without the distractions. But those distractions are costly.
Yeah.
When you get in the flow, you don't want to be dragged out of the flow.
I think, there's 2 points I want to make from what you just said. And one is, I think the average context switch you were talking about is 20 minutes. So every time you every time you interrupt a developer, it takes them 20 minutes to get back to where they were, right?
Yeah.
So just think if they were interrupted just 5 times a day, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of wasted time, right?
Yeah, and so there's the other side of that is if I have to interrupt someone 5 times a day, so it's like this the one thing, the getting interrupted is bad. The having to interrupt somebody else makes you feel bad.
Mhm.
Mob programming seems like this can't possibly work. Like we're going to just sit
Right.
there and we'll never get into the flow. But what we
But
found
you're all in
was
the same space though, right?
exactly. So we're
Yeah.
still in that personal flow, but we're also now getting this thing that's called team flow. With team flow, we have this basically, we're all working on the same thing. So we are all focused in the same direction, but we're bringing our skills from all these different areas. So the ideas pop up faster.
Mhm.
Matter of fact, if the front end person's going, so we need to change these to red when this happens and green when that happens. And the database person says, well, where are you going to store this information about these rules? So
Mhm.
we've
Exactly.
gotten to that point a lot sooner than we would normally get to it. So we're getting, so I like to think of it this way. Somebody shared this idea with me. We're not trying to move faster from here to here. We're trying to compress the trip. We're now
Mhm.
taking a much shorter trip to get from here to here. We're eliminating a lot of things that don't bring value. Have you ever noticed you're asked to do something, you sit down and do it, and the whole time you're going, "This ain't gonna work. This
Yeah.
is no good." But
A waste of
but when you
time.
that's right. When you bring back to the team, when the team is doing it together, somebody's going to point it out, going, "I don't think this is going to work." Now
Yeah.
we're going to have that real conversation much sooner. And this is a big part of teamwork. But I think you have mob programmed, but in a very different domain. When
Yeah.
you're playing with
Yeah.
a band is very, very much like mob programming. You get the
Right.
team flow. You hear somebody over here do a riff, and then you go, "Oh, I like that," and you're going to play off that riff. Now,
Mhm.
there's that famous jazz musician. Forgive me for not remembering his name. When he heard someone do a mistake, he'd riff off their mistake.
Mhm. Right.
And so, like, this is a very creative process. It's
Yeah.
an innovative process. And you get that with the band, you get that with a lot of other human endeavors. And programming is just one of them, where we
Yeah.
get the people together and they get good at working as a collaborative effort, as a team. We're going to see some great things happen.
Yeah. And the other thing you mentioned a little bit ago was when you were talking about waterfall, and you were also talking about documentation. And one of the things I struggle with more and more as we go down the agile world, at least, is trying to get people to do documentation is like pulling teeth,
Certainly.
and when I ask them for documentation on what the feature they're asking for, they just don't want to do it. They just
Yeah.
said, here's a sentence, sit down and start coding. I'm going, no, wait a minute, and so that's one thing I really was, and I know documentation is part of Agile, but at least where I've seen it implemented, I don't see that happening, right? I still get one sentence requirements, right?
Right.
And the one thing I do miss about waterfall is that upfront thinking documentation part. And they reminded me of a study that this guy did, which I'm going to actually be talking about in a couple of user group meetings this month when I do my defensive programming talk. And in that talk, I talk about the cost. One of the first things I talk about is the cost of fixing bugs, right? And in the chart I show, by the time you fix a bug while you're coding, that's 10 times the cost, right? If you didn't figure it out when you were thinking about it or documenting it or something like that. So by the time you sit down and code, you've already 10 times the cost to fix something you didn't think about before, right? And then if it gets to the user, that's like 150 times the cost, astronomical cost, right? That goes in if a user reports something, right? And so, that's why I am kind of a pain in the butt about, architecture and software quality and stuff like that to make that better. And so that kind of leads me into my next question, because so far we haven't gotten any questions. So I'm going to keep asking them. So that leads me to my next question. So now that you've come up with mob programming and you've done it for real, at a company, a couple companies I know here in San Diego, and now you travel the world teaching it, right? Overall, do you think that this is a two-part question. The first part is for business owners. So do you think that you can actually get features done faster or bugs fixed faster or whatever? And second is, do you end up with better quality software that can be modified easier in the future? I know that's two big, long questions, but
so if we're getting the second, then we probably were getting the first as well. But let's start with that. So from a business point of view, I often hear it this way. How can you possibly be productive with 5 people at one computer?
right.
And so what we often think is that if we know what we need to get done, and then we can get, if we got 5 or 6 people, then we can get 5 or 6 things being worked on at the same moment. And therefore, that clearly needs to be, that's an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
But we are introducing a situation where all those interruptions,
Right.
where all that context switching and so on has to happen. So we start introducing meetings and a lot of the documentation. And I agree, it's good to document it, but it's good to document it just sufficiently, just enough documentation.
Mm-hmm.
What's our big idea? And hopefully that big idea isn't going to force us to write something that's unchangeable later.
Right.
So what's the big idea, and what can we do first to kind of start proving that this is going to work for us? So if we start there, then we can, so can this be productive? What I think we discovered almost immediately working this way. The end of that first day, we were doing these end of the day retrospectives, and I'd ask the team what went well today. And I was working with them, so I kind of had an idea too. And they all said, boy, working together was great. Well, what was great about it? Well, we were doing a lot of knowledge sharing. Well, that
Mhm.
means tomorrow is going to be better
Mhm.
because we're learning more. We were getting a lot done. It was of higher quality, and it was less stressful.
Yeah.
Now, at first, for us, it was less stressful, but I've noticed with a lot of other teams, it's more stressful at first. But we
Mhm.
had been practicing the skills of collaborating for almost 6 months before we started doing this. So we had a little bit of an accelerated from starting it to making it effective. This is the thing. We were getting more done. So any manager who wants to ask me that question, how can you be productive with 5 people at one computer? I used to answer, I don't know, but we are. So, but then I spent a lot of time researching this. And, the band is a good example.
Mhm.
There's an example of a team. You're going to get a lot better results out of a band when you've got the band together.
Mhm.
So if you're going to play a gig, let's say it's a wedding, and you're going to play dance music for that wedding, they're not going to come to you and say, look, we can't afford to have you all working on the same thing at the same time. So I want to do 5 different songs while then everybody can dance to the thing they want to. Well, that would
With only one
Or,
instrument.
yeah. So what if we're going to bring in? Yeah, that's a good point. All we have is bass players.
Right.
But what if? Well, I can't afford to pay you all, for this whole thing. So I want the bass player for the first hour. The drummer that comes in will be there for the second hour. The lead singer for the third hour, and the lead guitar player for the fourth hour. The experience isn't what we're after.
Right.
So there's lots of reasons to investigate as to how can this be more effective than separating people. People will ask me this: where's the research that shows working as a team is better than working separate?
Mhm.
And I say, I don't really know. There are people doing that research, but why did you decide that separating people is better than a team? Where's the research that told you that separating people is better than having them work as a team? It just seems like it should be,
Right.
but I don't think it really is. I think that because of the high costs of collaboration, the high costs of the communications, and the very faulty communication, we
Mhm.
wrote something down, we hand it to someone else. Are they going to understand it? They have to be really good at understanding, or we have to be really good at writing to
Right.
make that a complete thing. Diagrams and so on. I've seen architectural diagrams that were too complex for anyone to understand, and it didn't grow out of the actual needs. It grew out of what we thought were going to be the actual
Mhm.
needs.
Right.
So I think for a manager, understanding that that enhancing the ability to collaborate, making it easy for people to interact with each other, can have big advantages. Now, the second part of the question, this was basically about
Code quality
later on.
and
Code
maintenance
quality.
and for the future. Building a
So
good architecture with good code quality that can be easily changed in the future. Yeah.
So the first thing I would argue that if your architecture itself can't be easily changed, it's mostly probably because you didn't decouple things well in the first place.
Right.
So just by learning how to decouple things, you could conceptually change the architecture later.
Right.
But what we found was, and this is amazing for us to see, in the 3.5 years I still worked at that original place, in 2011 to 2015, but the 3.5 years after we started mob programming, we only received 3 bug reports into our bug tracking system on something like 40 projects that we had worked on in that
Wow.
time. The work that was done prior to this was getting bug reports still all the time. So what happened here was, by having the testers and the product owners really being first-class members of the team, they could have their input at the time we really needed it to make sure we were writing the right thing. Now, bugs can be thought of as we're introducing some work we're going to need to do later that we shouldn't have introduced in the first place.
Right.
And they call this failure demand in certain businesses. Failure demand is the work we need to do now because we didn't do it well before. But we often don't really know how to do it well before, because we
sometimes you don't know. Yeah.
But this is what we found, though. That was the numbers we had. There was since then a movement come along that's called zero bugs, or bug zero. I'm not sure what they call that, zero bugs. It's like, I will often ask a team, what's the appropriate number of bugs to have in your code?
0.
You know, like 0. So whatever we can do, and part of it is by having all the brains on the thing at the same time, we alleviate a lot of the problems that happen when we work as individuals. When you're working as an individual, let's say you're the database expert, you're really more concerned about the database need than you are about the need of the application and how it will affect the other people that are working on it. When we work as a team, we start realizing whatever I demand is going to affect someone else here. So I have to be more empathetic about that. How can I make it where it's easy for them to do their job? How do they make it easy for me to do my job? And if we get good at that, we're just going to get fewer bugs because of that more full communication right at the beginning and as we do the work. But because we're doing things in small bits, we are delivering those frequently, like several times a day. We're going to have automated tests in place.
Oh, yeah.
And this really forces the point of having the automated tests.
Yeah.
And if they're not very good, we can see that right away. So all of the things that lead to higher quality code when you're working as a team, we found were easy to accomplish. Matter of fact, the team keeps you honest. When you're working alone, the pressure's on you. I got to get this done. You're focused on getting it done. When a tester's sitting next to you, they're looking at it from a tester's point of view. And a tester's point of view is, that's going to introduce some other problems in these other areas. We better investigate that before we push this code to production. They'll also say things like, there's some edge cases here you're not considering. When I'm focused on writing the code, I'm focused on this current issue. But those edge cases might be slipping past me. It's like just doubling my brain. It's doubling my brain to have a whole nother point of view sitting with me. And if we have all these different people from the team with those different points of view, we're getting a very full picture of what we're trying to do. Now, I think I've over answered that question.
No,
but
it's
this
good.
is just this is a bargain.
But that's one thing that I'll follow up on, and then we got to go. We're almost out of time. But the one thing that I've tried painstakingly do for 20 years now is, even in the beginning when we're coming up with even the feature requirements or maybe even the design requirements phase, maybe having everybody in the room, QA, database, the stakeholders. I've never been able to get that done. I cannot get people to do it. And I think, and because we are out of time, I think part of the problem that we have as developers trying to, even if we come up with a good methodology like yours, right? If you can't get management to buy in, it's not going to happen, right?
That's right.
And in most cases, management is the problem, because either they don't understand it or they don't really want to do it. But to me, the biggest thing, and this has happened at most companies that I've worked at in San Diego, is what we call butts in seats, right? They managers think that if there's more butts in seats, typing away at a keyboard, that means they're going to do more better code. And it's completely opposite.
That's right. That's right. So they're paying attention to efficiency and productivity. And what we really want to be looking at is effectiveness and enhancing the flow of the work. So effectiveness really means we're working on the right things. Efficiency, productivity, efficiency is just like it's everybody's hard at work. They're coding away. Productivity just means we're getting stuff done, but it doesn't mean we're getting anything done reasonably well or that people want to use or whatever. I'm after effectiveness. I want to see us working effectively. My dad used to say, I'd rather work I'd rather work slowly on the right thing than quickly on the wrong thing. And I kind of like that saying. It maybe doesn't go for everything, but in woodworking and electrical work and so on, boy, it pays. You pay attention to the right things, you're not gonna have to revisit to fix problems that never should have happened.
Yeah. So
this is great stuff. Thank you so much for bringing me.
I'm so sorry we have to end, but before we end, I want to make sure I ask you the question I'm going to ask all my guests, and I asked Scott Hunter this last week, and he gave an awesome answer. But I wanted to, because this is a personal question. So besides traveling around the world and teaching geeks how to do software processes better, what do you do for fun that's not geek related, not software related?
So previously, in my earlier years, it would have certainly been playing music. I love to play music. I don't do much of that anymore. I don't have the time to keep my chops up, as they say. But what I'd like to do now is get out into the wild and take hikes and climb mountains whenever I get a chance. I love to get out into nature. So those are the areas that have continuously been with me in some way through my life.
And we live in an awesomely beautiful area of the country too. So hiking is awesome around here, right?
And every day the weather's good enough to go outside and do something. I mean,
pretty much every day.
When we get the worst weather we get, it's like an average day at many other places.
Right. I was before the meeting started, I was telling Simon what the temperature is here, and he just started laughing at me because he's in Delhi, so oops. So I go, I know, but 90 degrees, 90 degrees Fahrenheit, for a kilometer from the ocean is hot for us, right? It's not usually this hot by the ocean. So, like I told him, I'll tell everybody, this is the first time I've worn a shirt in 4 days. So, well, thank you very much. Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
I thank you so much, Woody, for agreeing to be on the show and coming on the show. And we didn't really get any questions, but I hope we do get some after this. And if you guys want to see Woody back on with questions, because I didn't even get to the no estimates part. So I'd love to have you back on, next year sometime when you have some free time.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks a lot, Woody, and take care. And let's stay in touch more than we're doing. All right. So that was Woody. Woody's an awesome guy, awesome, nice guy, and very, very knowledgeable, and just a all-around great guy. So we're almost done with the meeting. With the session. I'm sorry I've gone over a bit. We've already done that, so we've already done that because I screwed up the slide deck. And I forgot if we did that before, but everybody who's watching gets a free copy of Code Rush from DevExpress. I've known the people at DevExpress for a long time, but I've known Code Rush even longer because it's the only code refactoring tool I've ever used in Visual Studio because I like it the best. And so everybody who watches the show, go to that link. You can download your free copy, and I appreciate it. And we're actually going to have one of the guys who started DevExpress on at the early beginning of next month. So stay tuned for that. With that, thanks for watching. Next week, I'm so excited. I'm going to have my good friend Mads Torgersen on. He's the principal program manager at Microsoft. That's what he says. He's really the new architect of C#. So please watch next week. It's going to be an awesome show, not only talking about what's coming out in C#, but also just catching up with Mads. Please be safe and listen to your medical professionals about the COVID-19 pandemic. Unfortunately, I'm seeing India is right behind us now in cases. So please stay safe. I want to see you back here next week and see you back at the CSharpCorner conference. So please listen to medical professionals. I'm actually working on a new song. I laid down a demo of that today that the other guys in the band are going to be working on. I have 4 other musicians for this song. It's going to be the intro song for this show. So stay tuned for that. We're working on it probably in a couple of weeks, hopefully. And with that, email your suggestions to me, please, 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 at dotNetDave@live.com. And thank you very much. And I'll see you next Saturday.